If I have control of the environmental variables, I can shape behavior. She selected scissors, and it's because she was implicitly primed to select scissors.
It's a paradigm shift. They do not live for our company lives for them.
Thanks for coming to behavioral modeling, engaging customers throughout the decision-making process. My name's Shane Johnston. I'm a lead researcher with a digital innovation company called EffectiveUI.
My name is Rich Warnaka. I'm the manager of user experience at Cabela's. And we've got a great presentation for you today. We're going to talk about behavioral modeling and specifically the background and context and why we decided to engage EffectiveUI to help us gain a better understanding of our customers from a qualitative perspective. Why behavior? Why did we land on that as we went through this engagement and kind of really think about that as being important? And then finally, some techniques, how you can apply this in your own organization. Just a little bit about Cabela's, just to kind of frame it up for you. We're the largest direct marketer of hunting, camping, fishing, and outdoor gear. Founded in 1961, tremendous organization and history around how that company was founded. Like anybody else, we have our challenges, right? So we're about $3.6 billion company. About $1 billion of that comes through our direct channel, Cabelas.com, and then our sister site in Canada as well. We have 55 retail stores, incredibly data-rich organization, a lot of information about our customer, and that's great. That tells us what has already happened. It doesn't necessarily explain why that's happened, and it doesn't help us to be proactive in creating better experiences for our customers out of the gate. As with any organization, we have a tremendous marketing department, and they do a fantastic job. But we have a problem, and that problem is some of the traditional methods don't necessarily help us, right? Personas, number of issues there you can read on the slide, but generally, I would sum it up this way. They become brittle and in some ways ineffective if not maintained, and that takes a lot of effort to maintain it. So we really wanted to approach the problem differently and find a different model that was a little more flexible and again helped us gain a better understanding of our customer. Shane?
Yeah, so inherently, I think the question is why behavior? Why focus on this as a primary feature of our research engagement? It's because ultimately it comes down to behavior. We want people to be doing something. We have an optimal state that we'd like them to be at. So by focusing on behavior, you need to first accept that we are not rational actors. We do not behave rationally. In fact, we're capable of rational thought, but it's not complete. It's bounded rationality. So to sort of demonstrate this, can I get someone, a volunteer of some sort? Yeah, you wanted to be a volunteer. You did, I saw it. You sure? It's really easy. So what I need you to do is I want to play a game of rock, paper, scissors. All right? You ready? So we're going to do one thing. Can you stand up? Rock, paper, scissors. Yeah. So rock, paper, scissors. 1, 2, 3, shoot. Those are the rules. All right, ready? 1, 2, 3, shoot. Boom. All right, so I knew she was going to throw scissors. Did anyone catch how I knew she was going to throw scissors? She kept throwing scissors before she... Exactly. I find her decision-making process is grounded and offloaded into the environment. She used a heuristic to say that, okay, I have 3 options to go to the right. I can take this off? That's okay. I will stay right here. So yeah, like I was saying, she offloaded her decision-making to the environment, and it affected her behavior. She selected scissors, and it's because she was implicitly primed to select scissors. So if we think about what the determinants of behavior are, this is grossly simplified for the sake of this talk. I'm not going to really do the behavioral and cognitive sciences justices by talking about this, but essentially it boils down to four things. Heuristics, which are hard-coded or learned rules of thumb. So to accept that we are not rational actors, we also need to identify that, you know, we're going to use rules of thumb for when we favor fast decision making. It is incredibly energy intensive to think about things, and instead it's better just to act. And this is sort of how we've adapted over time. The next determinant is previous experience. So this is just tacit knowledge. I know that kettles on stoves are hot. I know that I should probably not touch it. This isn't something that I evolved to learn. It's something that I've learned through experience, and it's going to shape future behavior. Emotional affect, and really this isn't love, hate, enjoy, loyalty, anything like that. It's more approach avoid. So it's what valence the emotion is, the responsiveness to stimuli, so how responsive am I in the environment, and then also motivational intensity. There can be something that's incredibly emotional, but it doesn't necessarily motivate me to do anything. And the last one, and probably most important thing from a marketing perspective and from a user experience perspective, is context. If I have control of the environmental variables or situational variables, I can shape behavior. And also, context leads us to define what the rest of these behavioral determinants are. If I can adjust the decision matrix, I can adjust which heuristic gets applied, whether it's a recognition heuristic or whether I prime you in your environment. So, you know, that's sort of a little background on, you know, an understanding of behavior. What we sought to do for Cabela's was behavioral modeling. And this is really, at a high level, a strategic framework for understanding customer behavior across segments. And I'm going to be opinionated here for a moment. One of the things I have a sort of larger problem with is segmenting to death. So let's get more nuanced, let's dive in deeper and really understand and get granular with our segmentation. And I tend to believe the exact opposite, that we should appeal to a commonality and find commonality behaviorally across our customers. So the objectives of modeling, or behavioral modeling, are to model common behavioral patterns for a given condition, and in this case it's shopping. Map behavioral determinants and customer touchpoints against the model. So what's determining their behavior, and then also what touchpoints do we as a company have out there to enable particular behaviors. And then once we have that, we can identify gaps in the ultimate customer experience. So this should look familiar to pretty much everyone in this room. This is sort of a standard marketing conversion funnel sort of model. Engage, or reach, engage, convert, commit, and purchase. And I think the problem with this kind of thinking is that it's very myopic. We're sort of looking at exactly how we as a company engage with our customers, rather than how our customers engage with us. It sounds like a semantic argument, but really what we're saying is that people have lives outside of engaging with us as a company. There are a whole host of things people do after they purchase something, and not everything they hear about is coming through marketing reach. And so what we did, this is a representation of a model that we put together, and what it's really saying is that there are behavioral phases, and in each of these phases there's a set of discrete behaviors, right? And within that set of discrete behaviors, there are probably behavioral objectives and motivations. So if we think about a piece of marketing communication to someone, let's say someone visited the site, they looked at a couple of pairs of shoes, and they abandoned. If we send them a follow-up email through some sort of channel, and we say, hey, you ready to buy those shoes? Here's a buy it now button. I think that's ridiculous, because their motivation is not to buy it now. They obviously had no intention of buying it now, and it's our failure to recognize that they were in a discovery or a planning phase of a model, and we're not responding to them. We're responding, they are here, and we're responding to them here as if they're ready to make commitment. to a purchase, but they're not. This is by no means scientific, but what it does get to is a strategic framework for Cabela's to say, hey, we need to recognize that our customers are at this point in the model and that there's a threshold or conditions that need to be met, which are these guys, that we haven't helped bridge that gap for our customers. We want to sell them stuff, but we should also be supporting whatever behavior they are exhibiting and help them migrate through that model. So just a quick overview of the components that I'm talking about when we start talking about behavioral modeling. Patterns, so identifiable regularity in customer behavior. Thresholds, the point at which a small change in conditions transitions a person to another stage or model in the shopping hunting life cycle. And I think these are barriers, and often they're thought of, sort of, we'll save that. The context, so what wasn't represented on that model, what we did was we mapped the context that each of those behaviors occur in. So it's not just in-store, bricks and mortar, it's not just online. Shopping's happening at home. It's happening when I'm talking with a friend. Shopping is not this, discrete behavior that happens only in one place. The touch points, so what exists in Cabela's ecosystem, how are they currently serving this sort of larger experience? And then roles. And I think this is probably the coolest part, is that if we do want to use sort of an abstract model like this, it's not that every customer goes through this. What our research sort of started to uncover is that there are people that are actively engaged in hunting or camping or whatever it is, and they will exhibit behavior in some parts of this model, but then they'll have another role like a facilitator or something that doesn't necessarily participate in the process, but they enable it in some way.
Thanks, Shane. So out of all this research, I think came some key learnings for us. And I think what we learned is shopping is not a linear process, right? And that's the model that Shane, the kind of traditional model that Shane illustrated for you, where we start with reach and go to the next phase, and then pretty soon somebody buys something. It's not that way. I might get into a discover phase, and then I go into a plan phase, and I go back to discover because I don't quite have all my questions answered. It helps support our need to design experiences around these behaviors for our customers. So what we want to do, we respect our customers very, very much at Cabela's, and we want to support their behavior as they go through this process. And so I think this model gives us a framework to help us better understand that and provide experiences that do support those behaviors. Again, segmentation alone is probably a one-dimensional view. We need a faceted view. We need a better view, more rounded view of what our customers are going through as they're making decisions. And lastly, there are different roles, right? So there's the role of the shopper, but there are also other roles that support that. And that was another key learning for us. I think the biggest one, though, is it's a paradigm shift, right? So customers do have lives, as Shane kind of talked about, right? And they do not live for our company lives for them. And that's the biggest kind of paradigm shift or learning that we took away. So again, how can we better support those behaviors, give them the information when they need it, and not forcing them down a funnel. How are we using this today? We're using it in many ways. It's really fueling and is kind of the backbone for a lot more research that we need to do around our customers. We take that research very seriously. And things like journey mapping and other things that we're doing. Definitely around the ethnographic and some of the more contextual type of research we're doing, contextual inquiry. And finally, it provides a filter for how we view our site. It gives us a really kind of a different lens to view our site through, right? So maybe typically our site was viewed as product details page and checkout and those types of things. And this gives us a different lens to kind of view things through. Again, where are these customers in their behavioral process, and how are we supporting that as they're going through? That concludes our presentation. Are there any questions? Yes. And I really think for us, it's based on contextual inquiry. It's based on interviews. It's based on direct interaction with our customer. Again, rather than analyzing analytics, using this behavioral model as the backbone for the journey of the customer, and then what challenges are they facing as they're going through each of these behaviors. For our digital experience, yes. Yes, sir. I'd say that's a journey in and of itself, right? So definitely we are starting to put some metrics in place to measure different parts of this for sure. And it's opened up a larger conversation within our organization around how, again, we can get a more faceted view of our customers and how we can service them better. So it's an ongoing process for sure. We're starting to put this in place more in our digital realm, and I would say engaging our retail partners in this conversation as well. Yes.
Right. So, okay, I employed sort of another behavioral trick to get buy-in, I guess. You know, this is sort of a client-vendor relationship kind of thing. But it's really about framing it in their language. And the model that I shared with you wasn't exactly what we delivered to Cabela's, obviously. What we did was we adopted the language of hunting, fishing, and camping and sold it back to them in a way that's intuitive. And this is sort of what I view what I do differently from a lot of how many people are familiar with user experience in general and have worked with user experience professionals? Okay, so there's a lot of jargon, right? It's a new field. It's something that language has been developed around. And my objective is to get out of that and reframe what exactly we're trying to communicate in terms that are very clear for our clients. So I don't necessarily care about calling things a journey map or whatever jargonous term that you want to throw up. We framed it as, this is what a hunting trip looks like given the model, and related that back to shopping. So it was sort of taking the two worlds, merging them into one, and it became intuitive for key stakeholders at Cabela's. This makes sense. I think that, and you brought up statistics, behavioral statistics or analytics data. I think that's a part of the story. Like it's not all in one, right? And I don't like to think of I'm sorry, we're running out of time?
I think part of it was also, what was your minimum requirement?
Minimum requirement. So whenever we do a research engagement like this, it's not, okay, we need 5 interviews and we're good to go. We can knock out a journey map or whatever it is. It's really a question of triangulating between multiple data sources. So if you have just web analytics data and you're just looking at conversion funnels and flow diagrams and whatever, I think that's good enough. Ultimately, it's how do you want to use the journey map? Is it influencing the entire strategy of a multi-billion-dollar company? Is it just giving you an idea of what features you may want to put on a roadmap? What's the purpose of the journey map, and what data do you need to answer that question reliably? Personally, I find a lot of use, or I find it best when I can take quantitative and qualitative data, ethnographic and analytics-based data, and merge the two together and use the two to validate each other or invalidate each other. I don't want to prove my own assumption. That's sort of just bad research. Yeah, you want to?
That I think, yeah, that is the whole point of what we're talking about here, and Shane just made it very eloquently, is that if we just look at analytics, that tells us what has happened, and that is in the past. We need to understand why that is happening so we can be proactive for the future, and that's really marrying these two together, right? The qualitative and the quantitative. I can tell you that we have started to put a little bit more emphasis around education and engagement, I guess I would say, right? And so there's a lot to that, and I could spend probably the next hour talking about that, but that it became obvious after doing this that we didn't really have that component on our site, right? So if we went back to the model just briefly, and again, this is a genericized version, but really kind of focusing on that discover and how are we helping people understand their problem and what solution sets may be out there. So that was the first part of your question. And could you repeat the second part? It was around communication. I'd say we are still in the planning process of that. But it does go to what kind of Shane talked about, is helping people overcome the threshold. So I'm in a particular behavior. There's a threshold that I need to cross over in order to get into the next behavior. How can we better support people doing that? How can we better give them that information? And I'd say we're still in the planning process of that.
Well, I think, you know, at a base level, there's some pretty big thing. I don't know how much I can talk about specifics, but I'm going to say that the bricks and mortar experience at Cabela's is dramatically different than the online experience. And there's a couple of things that you simply can't recreate. They have a number of very talented outfitters, is what they call them. They're sales representatives. They're amazing, right? They guide me through all the phases of this model, from discovery almost to sharing, right? Like I can try out different bows and arrows, and they'll bring me to a section I hadn't even considered. That's something that's incredibly difficult to replicate in the online channel, right? But we know that there is a social component to, not social media, but a social component and a social structure intimately tied to the bricks and mortar experience. So the question is, how can we translate some of those things to the online channel? And it doesn't have to be something as obvious as a digital e-outfitter, right, that sort of helps you navigate the site. Like, that would be a dumb interpretation of this. But what is important is the sort of artifact that a human is helping you, or curating something, or like what design strategies can we employ to bring that outfitter experience and its distilled experience to the online channel. So I don't know if that really answered your question, but there are major gaps there, and it's really about understanding what the context and touch points are that currently exist and finding the gaps between the two, developing strategies for those gaps. I think we're out of time. Thanks.